Today we're going to talk about using Nautobot with Ansible Automation Platform. Historically, many network engineers had their inventory listed in wikis, PowerPoint diagrams, and even spreadsheets. However, many organizations are migrating towards using more modern sources of truth, like Nautobot. In this demo, Nautobot is my source of truth, and Ansible Automation Platform can dynamically consume that data to push configuration changes. If I add a VLAN, assign an IP address, or even change an MTU, Ansible can automatically push that change directly to the correct network devices. Nautobot is an open source network source of truth platform. It models sites, device roles, platforms, IP addresses, tags, and relationships. It can act as my network's IP address management solution, or IPAM. However, it is not just inventory. It contains what I want configured on my network infrastructure. Instead of maintaining a static inventory file, Ansible Automation Platform is configured to use Nautobot as a dynamic inventory source. That means every automation run reflects the current network state. Let's go ahead and look at the demo now. Inside Ansible Automation Platform, there's two integrations. One is with inventories and one is with event-driven automation. I'm going to go ahead and show the first one. Inside Ansible Automation Platform, this is the web UI for Ansible Automation Platform. I'm going to go ahead and set up dynamic infrastructure or dynamic inventory. Inside here, under automation execution, I can click automation execution, I go to infrastructure, and then I can click inventories. Inside inventories, I can just search for my already created Nautobot inventory. Now, if I want to run a playbook inside Ansible Automation Platform, I need something called a job template. A job template, for all intents and purposes, we can think of it as a playbook. It needs a Git project to run the playbook. It needs a credential on how to log into stuff. It needs an inventory. What am I logging into? So the inventory can be a static INI file. It can be a YAML file. It can be really simple. Or in our case, we can actually make this a dynamic inventory plugin. So underneath the inventory, we can simply click sources and we can add a custom source. In this case, we have source from a project. Inside here, I'm going to go ahead and click edit so it'll be a little bit easier to see because you'll see all the options with the drop downs. I have created a special EE. I'm going to put a link into the YouTube description below. But what I've done in here is I've already gone ahead and I've created a DE and an EE. A decision environment is for EDA. We'll look at that in a second. And we have an EE. What this EE is an execution environment. And this has all the Nautobot code already pre-installed into an execution environment where you can run with Ansible. You can actually get that code from console.redhat.com. This is part of our partner, our certified partner collections. You can actually see the different versions. I'm on the latest. And inside here, we can click contents and we can see that there's an inventory plugin in this piece of code. Specifically, I'm using this GQL inventory. So it's already installed as part of this EE, and then this shows you how to make it, or you can just use mine. You don't have to go ahead and reinvent the wheel. Inside here, there's a simple YAML file called Nautobot Inventory. And this Nautobot Inventory says, hey, for the plugin, use that particular inventory that I just pointed at. I have certs off just because this is a test instance. I don't think I have a SSL cert on there, or I didn't at one point. And this is going to query everything and then sort it, and we can sort it any way we want, but this is just an example from the documentation. So when you set this up, all you have to do is tie a credential. This is the login information to Nautobot. I have the project where that particular file is. The project's just a Git repo, and then I point to that exact file. You can actually type this in if it doesn't automatically complete, so you can just make sure it maps, and you can look at the debugs if you get confused. The rest of these values I've left empty, but you don't really need to configure anything else. You could say update on launch. It means every time something uses this inventory, I need to sync this. That's fine. We're just going to manually do it so you can look at it. So in here, I'm going to go back to the inventory sources. That you can actually have multiple inventory sources. We just have one here. I'm going to click sync. And what it's going to do is it's really quickly going to sync with Nautobot. And it's going to download everything that's in there. There's just one little syntax error, but don't worry about this. And then what we'll see is it's pretty quick. It was 6 seconds. And we're going to go under, actually we need to go back to the inventory. I clicked too far. But inside here, as soon as it's synced, it'll get that host, Sean switch. I just have one switch in there and it has some groups. So that YAML file sorted it into a group switch and a group Chapel Hill. Chapel Hill is where I live, so I just made that like a site within Nautobot. So we can actually see in here, Sean switch, location Chapel Hill, rack 1A. We could sort it by racks too if you wanted to. So really easy, we can use the metadata from Nautobot to sort this into inventory. Now, what's more interesting is I didn't just sync the management IP and some location configuration, like that's cool, is I actually can sync a lot more information. So particularly, or specifically, what I'm trying to do is sync these particular interfaces and their configurations. You can see, I think, oops, I need to zoom out so you guys can actually see everything. I wanted to zoom in so it's not too zoomed out, but now you can see the IP addresses left and right. So you can see particular IP addresses have been assigned to particular interfaces on this virtual switch. And you can see I have some loopback addresses here because specifically this is just like an AWS image I have, so it doesn't have real physical interfaces. And the one thing to keep cognizant of is you probably want these interfaces to match the exact naming on your devices, because Ansible is not doing checks of that. It's just going to apply exactly what Nautobot has. But anyways, we can look in here and see what particular interfaces are configured with what IP addresses. And we can look at this switch and we can actually see all that information on Ansible Automation Platform. We have location information, we have roles, we have interface configuration, and we could do anything. We could do BGP, we could do OSPF, we could do anything that Nautobot handles for full configuration drift. I just kept it simple to show IP address information to interfaces because it just kind of clearly indicates how this kind of works. So the first one is every time I want to run a job template, I could say sync my inventory so my source of truth is up to date as soon as I need it. Like literally where that checkbox was, I could say update on launch. Every time I launch a job, it's up to date. That's nice if I'm launching jobs, but there's also another integration here, and that's with EDA. So EDA stands for Event-Driven Automation or Event-Driven Ansible, and it shows up under the automation decisions here in Ansible Automation Platform. There's a rulebook activation. This is simply a rulebook. The difference between a rulebook and a playbook is a rulebook's always listening. And this plugin talks directly to Nautobot. So it has two rules in there listening. And we can actually see the history of this particular rule. We can look at the debug and everything that it's doing. And we can actually go into the playbook here. So I built a DE, a decision environment, similarly to the EE. And there's directions on here how to build it. Or again, you can just use mine. But this rulebook's actually quite simple. There's some example ones in here. Like this changelog is in here. This might come handy for someone is if you just want to debug every event so you can look at the events, this is nice because you don't necessarily need to know exactly what the data looks like. You can pump some events out, look at them, and then figure how you want to trigger off that particular event because it may look different for different vendors and different tools or even different events. So once I figured out what that event looked like, I created this for any IP address changed or updated indirectly. It'll run a workflow job template. So if this particular source has this rule, run this action. So I have created or updated directly or interface updated. So I actually have two rules and two actions that are the same, just to kind of handle two different events. And you can have multiple different rules. I just have two rules is a very simple example. Again, something that I can share on a single screen. You could put a bunch more rules in here and you could use AI tools to help you build those out really quickly. So what this means is we're going to go into automation execution and just look right here. You can see that inventory sync is what I'm going to do. I'm going to go in here and I'm going to click, we'll click loopback 7 or something a little bit different. We're going to click edit interface and we're going to go ahead and assign an IP address, or we're going to change it. Actually, I deleted it manually and I didn't sync. So that's another use case is you could actually run automation to sync your source of truth because your running configuration might not match your source of truth. I don't have that set up right here, but it would be simply just going the other direction. But I'm just going to flip this particular IP address to .3. It's in my IPAM tool here, configured on Nautobot, and then I'm going to click update. As soon as this updates, it says modified interface loopback 7. This actually fired off an event to that plugin. So if I click back here, you can see that it triggered this workflow. Now, the workflow's very similar. It's just kind of trying to simplify this out for two different workflows, or two different job templates rather. So the workflow just has two job templates. The first one, what it's doing is it says, hey, this event happened. I want to grab that information. And it knows interface loopback 7 on Sean's switch changed 172.16.13. Now I could go ahead and just configure it, but I just made one job template that's really simple that outputs the information, basically the event information. And then the second job template, if I go to the workflow, I'm back one. What's the source? I'm looking for source workflow. Workflow. There it is. I'm just blind. In the workflow, I can see the output. I can see configure Nautobot. And what this is doing, sorry, not configure IP address for Nautobot. It should say from Nautobot, not for Nautobot. But what it's doing is it say, hey, we're going to configure this. And then it actually ran on that inventory and it actually changed that configuration. So what we can see is if I log into this particular switch, which you should see now, I can actually show IP int brief, and I actually see loopback 7 now has 172.16.1.3. And that's all it was doing. Is it's a very simple playbook. Is it says, here's the data model before, here's the data model after, and this is what I did. It's just apply that interface. Now what that's showing is as soon as I made a change with event-driven architecture, it made that change for me so I can keep it up to date. You can see that some of those IP addresses aren't on that switch because just as a demo, I was just showing a single interface, but I could actually sync the entire configuration instead of just a single interface. So I can fire off an event and say, hey, check this entire configuration. Ansible is smart enough and idempotent enough that we can actually enforce just the changes. But this was just a simple demo where I'm just showing the interfaces because sometimes you might not be ready. An organization might want to just do interfaces before they're ready for changing routing protocols based on event-driven architecture. So I showed two examples here where it integrates really well. The first one was that infrastructure, the dynamic inventory, and the second one was EDA. And I actually used them both in concert in a combination where you could use both different use cases at the same time. I hope this helps you understand how Nautobot and Ansible Automation Platform work together. Nautobot Connect is your source of truth, while Ansible Automation Platform acts as your execution layer. This model supports governance, repeatability, and controlled change because your targeting logic lives in your source of truth, not in someone's local inventory file. For more information, look at the description on this YouTube video or check out the link on the screen now. This will take you to a GitHub repo that has detailed steps of everything I showed in this video. Thank you for watching and happy automating.